60 to 80,000 chemicals are created every year, man-made by us, blasting us in our environment, our homes, our cars, our clothing, our bathroom, our environment, our offices. Now, what can you do?
Here in the United States, according to the BMJ, one of our most prestigious medical journals, about 60% of the average American's diet is now ultra-processed foods, right? So we're taking something that is so seemingly a quote plant-based food, right? Yeah. Like corn, and then eventually it gets turned into Pops cereal, right? Yeah. Or Lucky Charms, right? It's so processed that you can't even recognize where it comes from. Yeah. Now, if we have a revelation and we realize that maybe I want to shift the ratio of processed foods in my diet and eat more whole, real foods, because of the nature of how we're doing stuff today, very disconnected from tradition, we run into some other issues here that I want to talk about because you highlighted here in the book. And you also, fair warning for everybody, heads up, you tell the truth, but you also provide solutions. Let's talk about when we say, you know what, I want to eat more fruits and vegetables, and we just go willy-nilly into the market and we're just gobbling up fruits and vegetables. Why might that be a concern?
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously the string is a big one to pull, but, normal conventional monocropping, obviously using glyphosate is their number one, and astrazine, and the list continues of pesticides, herbicides. So that residue is on certainly the dirty dozen. Use your common sense with this to unpack the understanding that a banana you can peel, so like a pear, a nectarine, a cherry, a apple, a romaine lettuce, all that's open to the air, to the water, and whatnot. So that has another layer of complexity, as we will find out, that if we normally just grew things and then ate them way back then or then no problem. But we have introduced this, I kind of play with it in the book, this chemical romance that we have with what's going on in the world. And so as these herbicides and pesticides are used, there's residue. And the crazy thing is to help the processing process, not only to help on the herbicidal side, they blast more herbicides right upon harvesting. So conventional fruits and vegetables have residues of pesticides and herbicides and glyphosate. So that's just one little layer of the chemical side. And now we know that they can't push that down the road anymore. They can't use the tobacco industry's idea of it needs more studies if this is safe. So it's, Monsanto's been playing games, and the Information Act has allowed them to allowed people to see that there has been some corruption of them knowingly having or these pesticides are carcinogenic and endocrine disrupting, just as a couple examples. So that alone, now what can you do? Like, okay, so people are like, I can't afford organic, right? Okay. Wash those, right? So wash those dirty dozens. So the ones that are exposed, the romaines and the lettuces and the celeries and those things, wash those, and you can use things like baking soda, hydrogen peroxide. There's cool little bubblers of O3 that you can put in water, and you can get rid of some of that stuff. So at least you're taking away some of the potentials of cancer, because they're showing this more and more, as well as the endocrine disruption that's happening. And we'll talk about EDCs more and more and more, but that's kind of the biggest problem. And then as it as fruits and vegetables come into the market. So it's easy to be flippantly and say, number one, I wish I didn't have to write this book. I wish I didn't have to do this. But let's say I can afford organic, but then I go and like, okay, these bell peppers are wrapped in plastic saran wrap. And you're like, what? Right? And so more and more things are plastic wrapped, and any sort of plastic connection in proximity to food is mostly a chelation of those chemicals in foods, like phthalates and things like that. So it's another endocrine disruptor. So now all of a sudden, hey, I'm just trying to eat whole food, but my food has been blasted full of chemicals. It has been wrapped in plastics, which, it's petroleum. It's BPA, it's BPH now, it's bisphenols. All of these things, you're now trying to just eat this whole apple, and you've just been hit with hundreds of chemicals at the end of the day. Because it's interesting that on average, a woman uses, not to divert too much, but just to create a little context, maybe a little EDC is not so bad. But on average, a woman uses 12 personal care products. And there's one study that shows over 100 chemicals, another study showing 120 chemicals that they're being exposed to
on a daily basis.
Basis.
Largely untested.
So let's set that context. 60 to 80,000 chemicals are created every year, man-made by us, blasting us in our environment, right? Our homes, our cars, our clothing, our bathroom, our environment, our offices, you name it. So of those, about 1,000 to 1,500 are tested at all. And they're then trying to figure out what is the safety limits. And that's already precarious, because real world is massively different than trying to figure out some safety in these things. So think about that. Blasting all of these chemicals out, they're only testing about 1,500. No agency, NIH, CDC, FCC, EPA, no agency has ever done any cross reactions of any of those 60 to 80,000. None, zero, zilch.
Even when they study them, they're studying them in isolation. Combined with the other tens of thousands of chemicals.
Right. So then on top of it, when you're creating products, there is reactions that happen as a result. Dioxins, 1,4-dioxin, like these kind of triclosan, like these kind of things can happen as a result of chemicals interacting, and then it's actually in the product. But since they didn't put it there, it's not on any label. So it's these reactions. That's just a tiny example that we are thrust into. Hey, man, I just want to eat some whole food. So, Shawn, I wrote Super Life. I want people to eat whole food. I would do all that stuff. But the elephant in my room was that, well, we have all of this exposure that's undermining some of the greatest engines of our bodies, our hormones, our endocrine system. How are we supposed to thrive if we're limited at what it is that we're talking about and not aware that these chemicals are blasting us? And then you ask yourself, come on, Darin, how could they possibly put chemicals in products that would cause us harm? Well, that's called plausible deniability, right? You know this very well. So like if a company or person running a company, if they don't test it in their product, they don't know that it's dangerous.
Right, yeah.
And then, but if you look at other research and other studies, you're going, no, it's dangerous, right?
Yeah.
No, it's absolutely endocrine disrupting. No, it's showing carcinogenic activity. No, it's showing a hijack of your endocrine system. Oh, it's showing connections to breast cancer. Oh, it's showing connections to endometriosis. Oh, it's showing connections to asthma and respiratory issues. So they get this pass. I mean, the sum of the whole damn thing, dude, is like, we're going to put these products out there, and when it's overwhelming, if it ever comes to that, we'll then we'll then test it, we'll then take it out, or maybe do something about that. And, you know, so it's this massive experiment, and one of the gnarly ones that we tried to do something for was going back to the pesticides, was DDT, right? So in 1972, they shut down DDT use. Guess what's in 98.6% of all adolescents today? DDT in the blood of 98.6% of all adolescents today. So it's a shining example of a forever chemical, right? So that forever chemical goes into 9,000 different PFAS chemicals, and PFAS is perfluoral alkali substances, or profluoral alkali substances, and these are cousins of Teflon, which was created by DuPont and Scotchgard and all of this stuff. And so that pan that you've been keeping around that doesn't stick, that's the mother lode of what Teflon was originally used for. And now those are being phased out, but now it shows up in all of these other areas. So all of this stuff, yeah, it's just nuts. And you know, you and I, before we were, you know, came on here, we're chatting that, you know, when you do your research and you do it so well and you present it, I can tell when you're reading it back that you are you're emotionally, what the fuck, right? And it's all over in my book too. And I kind of didn't want to hide that, so I'm just going, is this a good idea, people? Is it like? And then when I'm recording them, I can't help it. It comes out of me going. So everyone listening, it's really hard to understand this level of the matrix, that a product, most of them, that is in your personal care aisles, in a cleaning product in your home, the clothing that you're putting on, the laundry detergent, the fragrance in it, the lotion, all of that stuff, and a whole lot more. It's hard to wrap your head around that there's harmful, knowingly harmful chemicals that are undermining the quality of your life. And are they acute? Are they ionizing, DNA damaging acute, like an X-ray? No. But the persistence of them, and like phthalates, bisphenols, they have half-lives of a couple hours. But the problem is, we keep getting exposed to them over and over and over again because they show up. Parabens, another one, right? We keep reapplying. Well, we started out with lotion in the morning, and then we put sunscreen on in the afternoon, like paraben, ethyl parabens, and like all these different stuff. So our body is getting like it would be like, how would it be if I just slowly just punched you in the nose? Just not hard, but I'm just going to tap you in the nose. But I'm not going to stop for 24 hours. And then the next 24, I'm just going to keep doing it. So these things persist.
Yeah.
And the accumulated body burden that they start using now, in terms of trying to understand, it moves into this category, and I like these terms that are now coming up, the allostatic kind of pressure of the body. And that is that the issue with all of this is and the 25 researchers I had and the thousands, what feels like probably pretty close to it, thousands of articles and research I had to read to kind of surmise what each chapter is going to be. The astonishing thing is that, number one, this is allowed at all to happen. And I think that matrix moment is where the data just says it, but that we have this overwhelming pressure of this allostatic pressure of all of these things all the time, that there's not a place that we can go, oh, it's that. Oh, it's, hey, Darin, what, it's just, I'm just wearing these nice little, Lycra underwear. How is that going to kill me? It's not. It's not. But that Lycra, that plastic, plasticizer, elastane, petroleum, endocrine disrupting, coupled with the lotion that you just put on, coupled with the cologne that you just put on, coupled with the shampoo and the conditioner and the fire retardant you just laid down on your sofa, all of those have endocrine disrupting compounds in them. So all of them are adding up to going, stop punching me in the nose, man. Right? Because if I kept popping you in the nose, your nose is going to be sore after 24 hours. You know what I mean?
After months and years, I'm looking like a bulldog out here.
So it's like, so that's this kind of amorphous, invisible elephant in the room of our modern society that undercut my father in the 90s when he came to me going, trying to tell us, I'm getting fogged out. I can't think. I can't. We were like, what are you talking about? I can't be around the deodorants and shampoos and conditioners. And here's a high-functioning, double-mastered, 10-year professor that can't think. And so he's trying to educate everybody, and I dedicate this book to my dad. He's trying to educate everyone in his microenvironments, in his space, and at his college and things like that, and handing out VHS tapes in the 90s, and his body burden was higher, and it come to find out, he was compromised by his thyroid being annihilated from years of playing around with atomic bombs in the Navy. Not so good.
Right. Where did that come from?
Yeah.
You see, that is an unexpected statement, but this is something that has occurred for many, many people as well.
Yeah.
Just being in that vicinity with nuclear weapons, there are people who are, it's a job that carries even a level of prestige, and we think, again, that we know what we're doing and handling these things. And so knowing that, you share this in the book, knowing that his thyroid would be compromised. They knew that then. They're just like, here, take these pills. We're just going to go ahead and destroy your thyroid. You're good. Right. But, and then seeing these things manifest where you shared in the book, and I don't want to give this away, actually, the story of what unfolded with your dad. And again, a big catalyst, I'm sure, for you being in this field at the level that you're at. But, I wanted to start this off by talking about perceptively for many of us, there's nothing more wholesome than a nice fresh piece of fruit, right? We're trying to do the right thing, but we're looking at this culture that has, the big mantra for a time was better living through chemistry. And it being tied into this premise, the name of the book is Fatal Conveniences, where the mission, it's under the guise of trying to feed more people, right? So let's monocrop and let's use these chemicals, no big deal, right? When the truth is there are many more intelligent and healthful, regenerative ways of going about this stuff. But over time, even with a decent idea for feeding people, it gets compromised where people, companies, and the bottom line, especially again, if it's driven by, if you've got shareholders and they're the number one thing, if it's a publicly traded company, is increasing that value for the shareholders. And so you start cutting corners and more corners and more corners. And you mentioned that term plausible deniability, right? It's just like, well, we didn't know. And you're sharing again and again that we do know. And in fact, I want to share this because you brought this up when you were talking about even the plastic containers for our whole foods. You shared some research indicating that the average person is consuming about 200,000 tiny bits of microplastics every year. And research is now indicating that these microplastics are partly responsible for our frightening plunge in global sperm counts. Again, endocrine disrupting chemicals, and we're just plasticizing ourselves. Is it not an accident that we live in a society that seems to be really fake right now? You know what I mean? It's just like we are what we eat, like for real.
For real, man. Yeah, and that's, you're literally ingesting particles of plastic, right? So which are petroleum based and chemicalized in order just to be created. So you're ingesting that, and throughout the book, almost every direction, the biggest fundamental thing is if we were really trying to undermine our entire human existence, then we are doing a really great job at it, because the sperm counts are plummeting. It's fun. I don't know if you've seen this, but they normalize the low, and then they just keep moving the targets of like, well, that's normal, that's fine, right? So men's testosterone are down, and the thing that also shows up more and more is the infertility shows up in a lot of different ways, right? So the over-estrogenized chemicals that bind to these receptors are sprinting women towards all kinds of, from ovulation problems, infertility of having children, endometriosis, painful cysts, breast cancer, all that. And then for men, dude, motility, the ability for sperm to do their job, the amount of sperm, like the essence of all of our human life. If you look at one thing alone, one marker, looking at the infertility, if you just looked at that, does that indicate to you that makes no freaking sense whatsoever? Because we're literally creating these things and undermining our entire existence in that way. Not to mention how powerful these hormones are for our optimized life, right? Testosterone's incredibly important for women and men, right? Strength, of course, bone density, immune system, all of these things. And then that's going away. And then the estrogenizing of society, right, is throwing off this chemical system to such a degree that even in, as I referenced in here, not that we're going to get into that right now, but the EMFs very clearly also showing motility and problems infertility wise. And so you're like, wow. So now it's not even a chemical, it's a damn frequency that we're running around with on our phones. We're blasting, where's the Wi-Fi? What's the Wi-Fi password? Da 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 da. Like, we're not even thinking about this shit, right? The history of electricity, which I dove into, and I actually had to pull myself out because it was so fascinating. But just to give a little snippet on that, they knew when they put up the first telegraph that the frequency and the magnetic field that would come off of those wires and in proximity of mammals and birds and migratory patterns, they knew then it was going sideways, right? Now and we'll put a button in that now, but so think, that was a telegraph. What's happened since then? From blasting every direction on the planet, these wires. Okay, of course, I'm not saying let's go back and rub sticks together and not have power. But we have to understand what we're dealing with, right? AC current is gnarly, right? It just is. Creates a huge amount of magnetic. Dirty electricity comes up in so many studies with child leukemia. There was a bunch of schools that in the United States that were found not even grounded properly, and kids and teachers, tenured teachers, all of them had a form of cancer. So playing with electricity. So anyway, we'll get to it later. But then just contemplate then jumping into 5G. I want a cell phone too. Like, I'm not going to say that, right? But we got to just pump the brakes, man. Get more studies. Use this stuff wisely. And please, 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 let us have a choice before you continue, because it's happening right now, put up 40 to 50,000 satellites in our ionosphere and blast us with radiation without us having a choice.
Yeah, this is speaking to informed consent.
Yes.
You know, with so much of this, it's just like, you don't have a say in it. This is just what we're going to do.
This is just what we're going to do.
And it's under the guise of being for us, but it's not including us as far as education and also our ability to choose other than, right? So again, but this also, another thing that I love, and I shared this with you before we got started, in every section you share, basically it's just like, okay, so now what do I do? And you give some action steps, because we are here living in this world. And one of my favorite parts of the book, you mentioned, just our use of plastic bottles, for example. If you got the bisphenol A, for example, we know there's study after study after study with it, in particular causing issues with fertility. Yeah. But you say, when you were done, and I'm going to read a direct quote from the book, when you were done with that bottle, you threw it away and it was gone for good. But in fact, there's no such thing as throwing anything away. There's no such thing as away. All our trash, especially the non-biodegradable junk, all our exhaust and effluents, all our residues and runoffs, maybe we can no longer see them, but they're there. They're here. Yeah. We are here on this planet. When we throw something, quote, away, it might be away from us spatially, but it's still here, and something has to be done with it. And that's the thing that we're so short-sighted we don't think about. Yeah. Like, eventually, what are we going to do? We're going to blast trash out to, into outer space.
They probably want to, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's just like, it's so crazy, the things that we're doing we don't think about, when if it was culturally programmed, just like it's culturally programmed for us to eat ultra-processed foods, if we had a cultural programming to where we were growing food with intelligence and efficacy, and then using the byproducts of our food waste for fuel, for example, which you were talking about, this is one of the most close proximity, intelligent forms of fuel. We can extract ethanol from food waste, right? And we have these battles, again, hundreds of billions of dollars, at least, probably we're looking at trillions, have been made through, absolutely it's trillions, the gasoline industry, right? And the wars that have been caused by that, this seemingly priceless resource. And in reality, there's so many other ways to go about fueling our modern innovations, also in ways that are cleaner, that don't advocate war and this destruction of communities, and these policies that lift certain individuals up to these places of prominence, again, where they can start to decide what you're going to be exposed to, what you're going to eat, what you're going to wear, what frequencies, if we're talking about this EMF situations, you're going to be exposed to. It's putting people in positions of power that oftentimes don't have our best interests at heart. Now, this leads me back to our original conversation about wholesome fruits and vegetables. Now, you shared a strategy, especially if we are, and this is according to the Environmental Working Group, they've got the Dirty Dozen, right? So these are known to have the biggest pesticide load. To wash these, there's veggie washes, there's baking soda options, there's vinegar options. Yes, I'm going to say something here, and I've got to keep it 100. When these things, just like us, when they're grown in the environment of toxicity, it's integrated into the tissue matrix of that thing, right? So the same thing with us, even though we see ourselves as human beings to be so evolved and kind of separate from nature in many ways. All of nature has this governing intelligence. That blueberry, that strawberry has genes as well. And it also has a drive towards growth and development and carrying on its species, right? And to find the right conditions to be able to, to grow and evolve. And so what's happening? What are the epigenetic influences happening when we're utilizing these fertilizers? One of them you actually talk about as well, pesticides been used for a long time. And you mentioned how it's essentially been banned as of 2022, chlorpyrifos, but it's still kind of caught up in red tape. And as we know, there's a phasing out process that companies can really take their sweet time. But you shared how chlorpyrifos, widely used pesticide, was notably causing, and you shared multiple studies, essentially birth defects and lowering the IQ of children.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of those, how is this possible? And I think it's important to understand, because this is a little bit of, maybe this is the right term for this, greenwashing too, that phase out period. If you go back, oftentimes they may press release this stuff and they don't actually do it, right? And so, digging deep on the PFAS stuff, because that stuff is forever chemicaled and it's everywhere. I saw this too, and I'm like, I'm gonna watch these freaking guys, right? So like the big boys like Wendy's, McDonald's, Chipotle, which maybe they will do it or something, but we're phasing PFAS out on the wrapping. So everyone listening, let's watch, and if they can prove it in the years that they just said. So that's the thing, like, and even that, and you mentioned there's all these subtleties. Let's go back to the DDT thing. We phased that out. Still here.
Yep.
So that pesticide, all those pesticides, those forever chemicals, man, you're way late, man. You're so late. What are you doing? Because you exposed, and you made a good point, because we have to give these solutions and not hang people too much. But yeah, if we're gonna be 100% real, Darin and Shawn probably ain't washing that conventionally grown anything, because we're not buying it, right? So there's a doctor, Shana Sharma, and she started to get into the EDCs and how this is not just you. This is starting to knock on that epidemiological door, right? These things, these persistent chemicals, DDT, it's persistent. It's in your body. It's, like I said, over 98% of the blood of our precious children, of something we were doing in 72, is affecting your kids and affecting in vivo, in the utero, like, it's on us. And then that EWG did that study where there's over 200 chemicals in the umbilical cord of children being born. So I wish I didn't have to write this book, but I had to write this book. My dad from the other side's going, Darin, you're going to write this book. But it's for us to look at this stuff honestly, because you can come up with any denial in your head. You can listen to me right now. Oh, that's bullshit. That's not real. They couldn't possibly put harmful chemicals. Good luck. Okay? Go find some of these studies that are in the book and read all you want. But it's here. It's happening. So if we don't look at this stuff, we can't change anything. You're a prime example of that. Digging out studies and going, we need to know what's happening, because trying to live optimally and just trying to live a life, our our meat suits, our biology and our chemistry is here. You can come up with any idea you want, but that EDC and that PFAS and that carcinogenic material, the 200,000 microplastics of plastic that you're consuming every year, you're consuming it. And it is affecting you to varying degrees. And like I said, the accumulative body burden is different for everybody. But this is where my optimism lies in, we have 8 billion of us. We have 8 billion people. We always have and always will have the numbers. So if you and I keep having these conversations and letting other people learn and expand and grow and become aware, then they're going to tell their family, they're going to tell and alter their buying patterns. They're going to tell, oh my God, I didn't know about this EDC in this product. I didn't know about the EMF in this thing. Just keep that away from your head. Still use your phone. This conversation of awareness needs to happen. Just like living honestly in relationships. Like share what's going on and for closeness to happen. Underneath all of it, that's what I want. I want people to have a level of freedom from this thing that we didn't have a choice in. Kids are being born with chemicals that the mom has already been exposed to. You and I were born into a chemicalized version of the world. I love the modern world just like everyone else, but I take levels of awareness and precaution to minimize knowing absolutely that this is stressing my body out. These are stressing my cells out. These are altering chemistry in my body. So if I can continuously minimize this stuff, then that's the goal, because we don't know. How do you know that your migraine isn't from the laundry detergent that you did? Because I watched my dad. I watched him having reactions to this. But then we go to the doctor and I get this migraine and they don't do anything about your environment. The home is also your second skin. You're laying on these mattresses, you're cuddling up to the beddings, you're cleaning your house with good intention, whatever chemicalized soup that is. Your formaldehyde is off-gassing from your couch. All of this stuff, from the glues in your floor to the paints. If we become aware of this stuff, we start to have the agency of pulling back our power, gaining that power, gaining that strength, relieving our chemistry, our biology, our cells from this burden that is just why it's here. I don't know. I mean, if that was a question, I very clearly you said it. The shareholders require a certain level of fiduciary duties, right? And so that modern day world has moved the God, a false God of profit and power, over the agency of health, sovereignty, strength, beauty, expression, and an infinite list of living a life full of joy and happiness and love. You're being hijacked slowly and surely by your glands, your master glands of your body, with exposures that are in our world. I don't know why. I don't know how the hell. I always love, PFAS is getting a hell of a rap right now, thank God. Like Simply Orange. As you can probably, as you write many of your great books, you're doing all this research, you're trying to stay up on it. And it's a moving target because there's more research that comes out all the time. It's you got to go, like, okay, I got to turn this in. And like, as I already turned it in, then all this info came out. There was Simply Orange, which is a product of the Coca-Cola company. It had
the good folks at Coca-Cola.
Good folks at Coca-Cola. 200 reported PFAS chemicals showed up in that product. 200.
In a wholesome glass of orange juice.
In a wholesome, beautiful glass of orange. And only upon another agency testing it, flagged it, and then, the good side of social media, it blasted it out there, and that put pressure on them to make a change. This is playing out in front of us, right? And the Toxic Safety Act that was initiated from PFAS. You find this funny. PFAS is getting a bad rap. It should be, because it shows up in lipstick, mascara, other beauty products. It shows up in clothing, a shirt that doesn't want to wrinkle, PFAS, stain repellent in your carpet, PFAS, showing up in everything, right? And it's also in our blood. High statistics of over 90% showing up in PFAS in our blood. And it's playing out in front of us. So these organizations pop up and they say, oh, now the government's going to step in, give this agency the authority to regulate it. You're like going, what? What about the FDA? What about the USDA? What about the National Institute of Health? Like, that was their job. So now there's pressure. Now you're popping up another satellite organization to do the job that was supposed to be done? What? Like, it's the most bizarre Twilight Zone I ever see. And as I look, each one of these, man, from a simple one to a dental floss that has PFAS and you're putting it in your mouth and it was directly connected to kidney cancer, like, just so it slips easily between your teeth. And they don't have to tell you that the shit's linked to cancer. Bizarro.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, dude, like, and at the same time, on the drive over here, I get a call from a buddy, and they're going through some massive changes, so I'm not going to call them out. This is not in a negative way. This is actually very positive. He owns a very large company that is a material science company that uses a lot of alternatives to plastic. One of the biggest in the world. Creating alternatives and working with all the big boys. McDonald's, Walmart, Pepsi, right? Tide's changing. Company's doing great. And I tell him, this plant-based company reached out and they wanted me to, like, all these meals, wanted me to look at them. And I looked at them and I'm like, what's the container made out of? And it's plastic. I'm like, guaranteed you have phthalates in your food. Can't support it. So I called my buddy. Hey, man, there's this company. He goes, yeah, PFAS is easy to change because he's a material science guy. It's just lazy. Right? He goes, oh, now we're playing with all kinds of different resins and algae and stuff. It's just, PFAS is really good at its job. It makes things slippery. It makes it oil resistant, so it doesn't leach into the packaging and all that stuff. And it's heat resistant, so it doesn't break down. It just, absorbs into your food, but the package is good, right? So it's these, largely I look at this too from my brain, is systems. And these legacy systems that want the profit, that have always done this. We put, liquids in plastic. Like, just pause for a second. Let's just think about drinking water out of plastic. I guarantee you, if I interviewed anybody and said, if I gave you a choice to drink water out of this plastic water bottle or a glass bottle, what do you think the common sense choice would be?
Obviously glass.
Obviously glass. There is a burden on people because there's not another choice. There was actually study done on this, right? That people feel stressed when you actually ask them. They don't have a choice. They go to the airport. I want water. I don't want to. I think you had a story about that where you go, I'm not drinking on that. So you actually dehydrated yourself and made yourself a little worse.
Yep.
Right. Which I applaud because that's something I would do. Funny that I remember that, but that it becomes the system of laziness that we are the effect of, right? So that's, as I'm driving and I get to talk to people every week, literally every week, I talked to head of sustainability at Visa. This guy, their clientele is 2.8 billion users, right? So I'm like going, you're excited about this space? Let's talk, right? And I talked to my buddy on the way over in material science, doing good things for the world at big scale. And the rumblings that's happening, I'm not talking like greenwashing ESG stuff, because there's a lot of greenwashing, the environmental governance stuff of big companies trying to do things. There are some real things going on, but there's also a lot of greenwashing. Greenwashing is a whole nother thing. Misleading labels, misleading brands, giving you a beautiful picture of an evergreen forest while you just took down evergreens to make the napkins that you're buying and then blasted them with chlorine in the process to make them beautifully white. And it's just this insanity. So I'm optimistic that we can wake up people one thing at a time, and that big industry, the more awake we are, the more there is a market, right?
Yeah.
And so I've vetted, the last third of this whole damn book is vetted companies. I tried to do my best. Hopefully things didn't slip through, but I tried to do my best in giving people healthy choices from all of these different things I talked about in the book. It's very hard to do. Yeah. It took a huge amount of time, a whole other group of people to help me get through all that stuff. So it's not to say don't live your life. Live your life. And I want you to live it more powerfully and kind of detox yourself from the delusion, number one, of these systems. These systems are failing us, but that we have numbers on our side. And we can make a hell of a change.
Wow. Detox yourself from the delusion. That's powerful. That's the most important detox.
Yeah.
Just to circle back one more time to the food piece, that's one of the things that we definitely connect on, our love for food, great food, and getting great food into people's hands. Yeah. And, just with everything in life, there can't be a problem without a solution. It's really two sides of the same coin. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes a problem presents itself and we are forced to innovate, to think differently, to be more creative. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we're seeing right now. And even platforms like this existing as a sort of counterbalance to the conventional narrative that has so many of us sick. Right. The thing is, we don't need a study to see how unwell we are as a species. Just look around. We're not doing okay. And then if you look at the data, something that was rare just a few decades ago, if we're just talking about the advent of obesity being normalized, we have over 70% of our citizens are now overweight or obese. And this being an underlying risk factor for all manner of our leading causes of death in this country, this kind of inflamed state. And then we're introduced to, for example, an issue with an inflammatory condition like heart disease or a viral infection. Like we're pre-inflamed as a species, right? And so here's the thing. When you mentioned, and I want to circle back to a couple things, but number one, in talking about food, one of the things that we can do, yes, dirty dozen, wash your stuff. Also, invest in better stuff.
Yeah.
Invest in the organic when you can. Yeah. Also, there are little pivots you can make, even buying some stuff frozen that might be more cost effective, right? That's organic. Yeah. Going to farmers markets.
Totally.
I'm a huge fan of that.
Yeah, man.
You know, and moving here to LA, you'd think, again, just in the busyness of the city, that there are farmers markets all over there's one on a mall parking lot on Tuesdays, like it's literally right off the highway. Yeah. And it's just like, damn, but it's right there. You know what I mean? And so that part, and even, dare I say, having the audacity to maybe grow something yourself. You know what I mean? Like you shared in the book, this transition, this fatal convenience to like give me the food, no work involved with me, where such a large percentage of Americans were farming of some sort, not just Americans, but just period, worldwide. Yeah. And now it's dwindled down to a fraction
2%.
Of our population who are involved in the production of food. Yeah. Right? And so maybe this is a return to that. And because it's such an important part of our life to have a little bit closer proximity to where our food is coming from. Maybe that's the ultimate thing it's calling for.
It's the ultimate. Like that, how much does that give you then? It starts wiping away obesity, heart disease, cancer, inflammation, like you said. It wipes it away, right? You take your plot and you can grow a lot and not a lot of land, right? You can, even if you want to play with it and start talking to some plants, put it on a windowsill if you don't have a lawn. But you know, that piece is so important, because just the custody of shipping things around, you're increasing nutrient density by you could look at least by 40%, right? At least by 40% nutrient density. So instead of getting your kale, your spinach, your pomegranate, maybe you want to throw a pomegranate tree in the backyard, you're eliminating the exposure of chemicals, but you're increasing nutrient density. So as we know, food's available, but the nutrients aren't, right? So we're overfed and starving nutrient-wise. And, food sovereignty, man, if we just went back to, think about this. There's 47 million acres of lawn.
That's a lot of lawn.
And what are they doing? They got their freaking sprinklers on it. I'm not saying get rid of all of your lawn, but imagine if we converted half of it, and you grow a tomato, you got too many, you can't eat it, you got to start giving them away. That's the abundance of life and of nature. You put one pomegranate seed in the ground, you get 70 pomegranates, and then you crack open one, you got 700 seeds. Talk about compounding interest, right?
Right, wow.
Right?
Stacked in our favor.
It's stacked. If we divorce her, nature, then you're adding to the side effect of your life again, right?
There's no prenup.
No. Yeah, so it's like, if you have any plot of land, good for your kids. And also, schools, playgrounds, plant some food. Kids will learn some of the most practical stuff ever, and they will thrive. Every kid loves getting dirty and learning how to grow food. So we could, with that 47,000 acres, or 47 million acres of lawn, keep your watering system, just plant food. We could eliminate food, for sure, food insecurity, right? And be sovereign here in the United States again, right? As an example, or anywhere. So, yeah, your expression of finding the know your farmer, pay your farmer, because, it's like a credit card. You're in a delusion of like you're buying something, you got to pay for it. And so if you buy cheap, the 60% of the ultra processed crap food that most of our, isn't it 60% most of our calories now are from.
For the average adult, for children, it's
more,
it's
right?
67%.
God, so imagine that if you're investing into healthy food, your credit card bill of those diseases, that will happen. You have to pay the debt. So as a parent, right? It's like, don't use that. I don't know about you, but I've heard people say, well, they're kids. So you just feed them this and that and throw the tater tots in the oven. And, it's like, yeah, they have more resiliency on one hand. Doesn't mean to feed them poorly, right?
It's the cultural phenomenon.
Yeah.
It's the culture, because again, there's a space to understand, like, you got a lot on your plate and you just want to get the kids fed, that whole thing. But what if we had a culture where that wasn't normalized, where you don't have so much stress and so much time away from them and from food? And like you just said about the lawn phenomenon, that is a really remarkable sleight of hand. Like, get your white picket fence, a nicely manicured lawn, growing food, right?
Yeah.
We want this appearance of prestige, right? Without the inability to feed yourself. And so what a incredible gift to give children, a skill to give them the skill of being able to feed themselves over, I would argue, learning their multiplication table, except if the multiplication table came to multiplying food.
Yes.
Right? When you started to share the numbers within the pomegranate seeds, right? It's just like, that's where this can be applied.
Yes.
But most importantly, learning how to feed oneself, I would think that's a pretty high rung of priorities. But in our culture, again, we're going into the things that are very, superficial versus real education about how do I take care of myself, my body, my mind, how to relate to other people in a healthy fashion. We were talking about this again before the show about ROR, return on relationship, being the most important thing, especially today where AI, I'm not talking about Allen Iverson. I'm talking about artificial intelligence is not even knocking on the door. Artificial intelligence is in your house. And right now, it's more important than ever to double down on relationship, community with real people, because, wow, it's getting a little bit sketchy. And so I want to ask you about this. You devoted a section of the book to personal care products. And as soon as you said it, because you mentioned, like, this for me is one of the most remarkable, because the name, again, it seems so wholesome, right? Personal care. And when you mention floss, right? This is something, again, we want to make sure that we don't have stank breath. We want to make sure that, we're taking care of our teeth. That's the thing that's conditioned into our culture. Right. And at the same time, what are we using? And so with that floss, you mentioned the potential of having these forever chemicals going in between your teeth, and your gums are incredibly, their ability to absorb things is remarkable. Like, and so that part, but also you mentioned you're not going to find out what's the coating is on your floss. They don't have to tell you, because it's considered a medical device. Yeah. Using these loopholes to manipulate and to essentially poison people and not give informed consent about what they're consuming, what they're putting in their bodies. Again, this is not to say don't take care of your teeth. We're just talking about being more aware of what we're actually using.
Yeah, these things are littered with these kind of loopholes that don't allow it. It's not on the back. You can't see it. Like if a mom, all the mama bears out there, right, who would do anything to protect their children, if you looked in their dental floss and saw PFAS and then a little asterisk by known to cause cancer, would you give that to your kid?
Probably not.
You want that kid to floss once, twice a day with that carcinogenic string? Should be just string. You know what I did? I just obviously got rid of that, and I use a clean organic cotton that has a charcoal in it. It's a great antibacterial. And I just wet it before I put it in my mouth, and it slips fine. It's just things like that. But the loopholes show up in so many different ways, which is crazy. Like, okay, it's a medical device, so some lobbyist convinced DuPont can just let anything happen with what's going in your mouth. How the hell is that possible? Well, it's possible. It's there, right? And then you have things like, continuing on that slant, you have trade secrets. And this goes into the fragrances and all of that stuff. As soon as you say it's a trade secret, there could be hundreds of EDCs and carcinogens even within that. So there's all these loopholes that show up that, and I dedicated a whole part of my book on fragrances, because it's like it shows up everywhere in the personal care. Not so caring, right? So, it's these fragrances are littered with this stuff, and you have no idea. Fragrance, that's all you see. Parfum, that's all you see. But then you have no informed consent. Zero, because someone who made the choice for you said it's a trade secret. We need to protect their secrets. We need to protect, someone worked really hard to come up with that formula, and then that formula is an IP for the company, so we have to have it as a trade secret. We can't I understand that. I formulated some products. You don't want to let out all your secrets, but those secrets got to be safe and clean. If they can't have these known issues in them. So yeah, personal care is a persistent one, because on average 12 products, and of those of a woman using 12 products every day, and of that we're talking 100 to 126 chemicals that you're exposed to every day. That's just personal care, right? The layers of this stuff, when then you lay down at night, what's that mattress made out of? What are those stain resistant sheets you got? Damn it, to have PFAS and plastics in it now. Get rid of those things. And clothing as a side and material, second largest polluter on the planet.
Yeah, and you cover all of this in the book eloquently, and studies to affirm everything. There's so much research that went into this, and it's really important to provide people with empowerment, so that you're providing that informed consent that you would think that these alphabet agencies would be doing for us, but the reality is they're not, and it is what it is. Yeah. So we've got to double down on our education. So I encourage everybody to pick up a copy ASAP of Fatal Conveniences and get yourself educated, and also getting educated on higher quality choices. Yeah. Because another one of the things you talk about is toothpaste, just staying in that same vein of personal care. Yeah. And it's literally there is these warnings on the box or on the tube, saying contact poison control if consumed, right? It's like telling you it's poison, right? And also they'll say use a pea-sized amount, but then on the commercial they're putting it looks like a sundae, like making the ice cream sundae on the thing. And so that's what I did. Always ice cream sundae on the
and you're swallowing. Every kid, even us,
you can't not. Did we not just talk about how absorbable, especially through the tissues inside of your mouth, there are sublingual, drugs and all these things. Your mouth is absorbing it, period. Just because you don't swallow it, you're absorbing it, for sure. Yeah. And you're inherently going to swallow some as well, because you got to swallow. Right. Or you know what I mean? So it's just, it's so silly. It's just the little loopholes to be able to.
And that, and then that open up that tube of fluorine, right? And fluoride, and like that whole scam-a-lama ding-dong, right? It's like, how is it that they convinced... it's I didn't even get into this, but I've read so much that now I have these little pico stories in my head about all of the research. And Just a little backstory. There was a community here in the States. It was in the Dust Bowl, and this area just accumulated most of the topsoil, and it turned into a very mineral-rich area, and everybody had amazing teeth. That was the genesis of it, and somehow they nailed it, thinking that it was the fluoride, and they convinced this whole it's even in our water. It's a proven neurotoxin, right? I have studies in there showing the IQ points of children going down. That's just IQ, people. These have pleomorphic effects. Keep in mind, we are also limited in our vocabulary of how detrimental every one of these chemicals are, of the thousands and thousands. And then they said, well, from a byproduct of the aluminum industry, the byproduct of the pesticide, they have fluoride. And they use fluorine gas, by the way, to create PFAS. And they've convinced us to put this shit in our mouth and drink it. What the hell is going on? So that's what, even me saying it, my energy comes up around it, because it's like, it's insane. But there are some really easy solutions. Don't buy that stuff, right? Buy something that's clean. It got some great products in there, easy to switch over. Filter your water. For people that may get overwhelmed, some of the kind of the way I think about it is start from within and go outwards to make some changes. So like, as you're opening your mouth, like you just said, you absorb so much and then you swallow it and then absorbs more. So water, clean your water. Turns out that PFAS water is delivering most of the PFAS to people, right? So clean your water.
It's the universal solvent.
Yeah, exactly. It's like makes it slippery inside your body and helps you to create cancer. So RO system, reverse osmosis your water. Everyone always asks, just add some unrefined salt over a good vetted clean electrolyte, and then you've eliminated that problem, right? And then we talked a lot about food today, so look at your food. Don't, heavy metals and PFAS and chemicals are showing up in all this ultra processed food, so start to eliminate the ultra processed food. Get the whole food that's not wrapped in plastic. Try to grow some of your own. Get to farmers market. So as you're opening your mouth, start there as a fatal convenience, and then as you're slathering things on your skin, then start to change those things, and wiping deodorants with the ammonia salts that are linked to breast cancer. Like, just start, don't get overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed that our society has allowed this to happen. But like you're a pragmatic person like me. Let's face it so that we can change it.
Boom, boom. My God, can you let everybody know where they can find a copy of Fatal Conveniences?
Yeah, so everywhere we can buy books, DarinOlien.com, and you can have links to Barnes & Noble, Amazon, you name it. Yeah.
Where can people follow you as well and just kind of stay up to date?
Yeah, so DarinOlien.com, and then Darin Olien on all of the social.
Hey, if you like this video, make sure to check out this video right here.
So just to specify, vegetable oil is not coming from peas and carrots. It's coming from seeds, actually. So some people call it seed oil. And there's 8 of them that I recommend everyone just get out of their diet.